Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. In the eternal words of the great Bunny Wailer, the Wailers were more than a band from Trenchtown. They may have started out as friends and eventually bandmates, but eventually became a family brought together by Jah. When you examine the family tree that grew out of the coming together of Bob, Bunny and Peter, you get a crystal clear idea of where Jah B was coming from with that statement. To begin with, Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer knew each other from childhood in the village of 9 Mile and would technically become stepbrothers when Bob's mom and Bunny's dad, then Cedella Marley and Thaddeus Livingston, began to live together as a couple. Peter Tosh turned that duo into a trio when he moved to Trenchtown at the age of 15 and made friends with the music-loving pair. They would after a few years become superstars in Jamaica as the Wailers, scoring several hit #1 singles. And by their early 20s, Bunny Wailer's sister, Shirley Livingston, then aged 21, would have a son by Peter Tosh in 1967. That boy, named Andrew Tosh, was thus not only the son of the stepping razor, but also the biological nephew of Bunny Wailer and step-nephew of Bob Marley. The children of all the Wailers saw each other as cousins, and the Wailers themselves as dad and uncles. One often overlooked fact is that the Tough Gong had 4 siblings, and they were namely Constance Marley, his half-sister and the daughter of his dad, Norval Marley, by another Jamaican woman. Also Anthony and Richard Booker, who were his half-brothers by his mom. But the subject of today's video is the kid sister that both Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer shared in the reclusive Pearl Livingston, the only product of the relationship between Cedella and Thaddeus Livingston. And many Tough Gong fans might be familiar with the picture of a teenage Bob Marley and his mom with little Pearl in her mother's arms, as well as the picture of little Pearl smiling in between her parents. Despite being the kid sister of reggae royalty, she's been remarkably removed from the spotlight and very little is known about her life. Just like her illustrious family, she was endowed with strong musical talent and was said to be headed towards a breakthrough until her trajectory was reportedly cut short by a series of family tragedies and addiction that snuffed out the makings of another Wailers family success story. Let's take a look at the untold story of the elusive Claudette Pearl Livingston. She was born on July 8, 1960 to then Cedella Marley and her then man Thaddeus or Teddy Livingston. The couple had met in the late 1950s when Thaddeus Livingston was running a bar in Kingston. He had first hired Cedella to work at his establishment before the pair would begin a relationship. She would move in with him at his home in Trenchtown and gave birth to Claudette Pearl Livingston about a year after that. But the joy of that new addition to the Livingston clan didn't last for long though, as Bob at first felt a bit left out at his mom's attention being divided. And also, not long after she was born, Cedella broke up with Mr. Livingston and moved to the US for a better life in 1963. Young Pearl was sent to live with her maternal grandparents in the 9 Mile area, while her brothers, Bob and Bunny, would stay on in Kingston and achieve smashing success as their breakout song, Simmer Down, would go to #1 in the Jamaican singles charts in early 1964. Cedella soon after married an American civil servant named Edward Booker, and as soon as she was settled, brought young Pearl over to live with them in Delaware, USA. Pearl would grow up in the loving and stable Booker household and became a doting, loving sister to her 2 half-brothers, Richard and Anthony Booker, that her mom would have by Mr. Booker by 1971. Meanwhile, things were looking up for her brothers, as the Wailers would soon bag a record deal with Island Records and would shortly after break into international fame on the strength of their album Catch a Fire. Though her brother's musical partnership would come to an end not long after, it was still all good, as everybody was doing well. However, tragedy would come when she would lose the man who had raised her as his own child and the only father she had really known. Her stepdad, Edward Booker, passed away in 1976 just as Pearl was finishing high school, and her mother would move with her kids to Miami. Pearl was a bright student and would enroll at the Miami-Dade College in 1978. Pearl, just like her mother and brothers, had vast amounts of musical talent, with a good voice and a natural flair for instruments, especially the keyboards. It was while studying for her degree that she really began to start writing songs and putting things in place for a music career. But this is where things began to go downhill. Without Mr. Booker, her father figure, and she being exposed to the horrible cocaine epidemic which had swept across Miami in the late 1970s, Pearl Livingston became a user and eventually an addict. This would derail her awesome trajectory and wreck all plans for a career in music. And it was while dealing with that crisis that the family would be hit by another huge tragedy when her brother Bob, who had been receiving treatment in Miami, would pass away in May 1981. Bob's death would also send her into another spiral that took her a very long while to break out from, and she was said to be getting back on track again when tragedy would strike home when her younger brother Anthony Booker was gunned down in Miami in 1990 after brandishing a weapon in a shopping mall and opening fire on the police. It was said that the young man had been suffering from severe depression as a result of the vicious battle for Bob Marley's estate that tore the Marley family apart after his death. This series of sad events would basically take an outgoing member of a musical family and turn her into a recluse. She would retreat from the spotlight and moved from Miami to Atlanta, where she lived for more than 20 years. Very little was seen of Pearl aside from a few clips that would surface on social media every now and then. But the one I saw a few years ago that would really strike a chord within me is a video of her playing the piano and singing one of Bob's old songs, "I'm Hurting Inside." However, one good irony is that the same way tragedy sent her underground, it seemed that similar events would also snap her out of her self-imposed seclusion. In 2008, her mom, Isadella Booker, passed away peacefully at the age of 81, and Pearl would go back into the studio to record a tribute song titled "Sweet Mama." Since her mom's death, she's since been a regular figure to Jamaica, seen in several videos around the island, looking bright and cheerful and soaking up the culture. And she's also reconnected with family back home and seems to have really bonded with her siblings, cousins, and other members of the Livingston clan and general extended family. In fact, she would move back to Jamaica in 2017 to be close to what was left of her nuclear family. It gave her the opportunity to really get to know her big brother Bonnie and her two elder sisters. Despite the series of tragedies in her life, she seems to be doing pretty well, at least from the footage that we see every now and then on social media. I really wish that she would step into the limelight some more and share a lot more of her stories, because Claudette Pearl Livingston is an amazing bridge of history from the heart of what and still is a very interesting arm of the Wailers family tree, and it would be fabulous to get an insight into that world from the eye view of Bob and Bonnie's kid sister. I'd love to hope that these prayers will be answered soon. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.